Sara Haghdoosti.
Hi everyone, my name is Sara. I was born in Iran, grew up in Australia and moved to New York 2 years ago. So if my accent sounds all over the place or has a hint of kangaroo, now you know why. I first came to the United States when I was 10 years old. I came here before September 11, and I remember my mum and I got to the front of the immigration queue. The officer took one look at our Iranian passports and asked us to follow him. And to put this in context, I had just been lavished with toys and attentions from flight attendants for 12 hours, so I thought this was going to be awesome, and we were in for a special treat. Instead, what happened was he took us to a small room. He started fingerprinting my mother and took a mugshot of her, and then he started fingerprinting me and had to find a stool for me to stand on because I was too short for the mugshot. And I remember crying the entire time because I had only ever seen bad people in movies be treated this way. And I had no idea what I had done wrong. And I know that my story isn't unique in this room. I know that there are countless others who experience racism and racial profiling on a day-to-day basis and fight back. And I wanted to shout out the people who are fighting against stop and frisk and the people who are at the forefront of the immigration debate and say how proud I was when they held the vice president to account on this stage. But one place where I think we need to do more as a movement is in the realm of foreign policy. And I didn't time for applause. We need to do more in the realm of foreign policy. And when I talk about foreign policy and race, I don't mean white savior complex or colonialism, even though they're very important. I'm talking about foreign policy as a gateway that erodes our civil rights and that seeps into our everyday rights here. A lot of us watched after September 11th as entire communities and countries were labeled as extremist, as dangerous and homogenous. And as a result, laws like the Patriot Act that said if you talk to anyone who we think is suspicious, we're allowed to take away your rights became law. As a result of that law, we saw mosques being infiltrated. Then we saw it being applied to drug raids and disproportionately impacting people of color. And then, thanks to Edward Snowden, we found out that the Patriot Act had become the legal basis for the government to listen in to every single one of our conversations. And I just wanted to say that these things all come from foreign policy. And that's not the only example. I know that many of us marched against the wars in Iraq and the wars in Afghanistan. And I know many of us grieved when we heard about civilians and soldiers losing their lives in those fights. And it's great that those wars are coming to an end now and they're winding down. But what is scary is that the military is donating their equipment to local police forces here in the US, and we are seeing tanks go down suburban streets, and that's not okay. Only a few weeks ago, on a supposed drug raid, a police officer flew a fresh grenade into the crib of a toddler here in the US. And it doesn't have to be this way. And this is why it's so important for progressive voices to be a part of the foreign policy debate. Foreign policy is just what we allow our government, how we allow our government to treat people who don't live in this country, who might look different, who might have different beliefs, and who might speak in different languages. And we can make a huge difference, and that's exactly the work Bareem does. Bareem means let's go in Farsi. We work with people in Iran and progressives outside of Iran and push for foreign policy that makes sense. That means we push for foreign policy that lets people in Iran have the space to do the organizing, the really inspiring work that they're doing, that safeguards our civil rights and ensures that money doesn't get wasted on useless wars in the Middle East where it can be used in our hospitals and in our schools. And that's a peace delegation we took to DC a few months ago. We're only a year old, but in a year we're up to 55,000 strong, and that's incredibly exciting. And we only got there because of the support of so many others in the progressive community. So I wanted to say thank you. Thank you for this community. Thank you for the work that you do. And thank you for being the type of people who stand up. And I look forward to marching alongside you in the future.